Push hard. There you go.
Oh.
It's just a rock.
It's hard to put into words just how good it feels to be where I'm at with the shop right now. Framing up the final wall, I feel like I can see a light at the end of the tunnel. I've said it before and I'll say it again, but the closest I've come to throwing in the towel was all around this shop foundation. And the fact that I've gotten to this point with the framing feels like a check mark in the win column. I recognize that we're not done yet, but in my mind, we're just a few short steps away from enjoying our beautiful new shop. As unforgiving as concrete is, framing is obviously a lot more forgiving. The old adage, I've cut it 3 times and it's still too short, can get expensive, but for the most part, if you slow down and pay attention, and once you learn the standards, framing might be one of my favorite things to do. It typically goes pretty fast, especially on the kind of jobs that I do, and for the most part, it's not very complicated. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm some kind of seasoned veteran in the framing industry, but I can comfortably do it. The way that I framed the roof rafters on the house is called conventional framing. Many years ago, there were no manufactured trusses. Everything was conventionally framed. Anymore, most young framers don't even know what the word conventional framing means. It's unfortunate, but things change in trades every day. The journeyman plumber that trained me as I was an apprentice tried to teach me how to pour a lead joint around cast iron pipe. He was certain that this would be a skill that I must have for the future. Over the next 15 years, I never once came close to pouring a lead joint. Like I said, it seems like things change, they become more efficient, and in some cases, they become easier. I can remember when PEX piping came on the scene. It removed the need to know how to solder and solder correctly. I would get concerned whenever I would see shortcuts that would eliminate the need for some of these skills. But the truth is, that's just how it goes. In framing, it became much more cost-effective to have a truss manufactured off-site, then delivered, and more than likely the trusses were stronger, they were more durable, and they would likely accommodate the engineering changes that would come with trends. The 40-foot wide span that we have on the shop is too wide to conventionally frame. Having my trusses manufactured off-site and then delivered here is our only option. About 3 months ago, I started getting quotes on my trusses just to get an idea of what it was going to cost. I did not lock in a manufacturing date because I wasn't certain just when I would be ready for the trusses. The last thing that I wanted is the trusses sitting out in the weather, waiting for me to get the shop walls stood up. So I didn't order the trusses. Fast forward to current times, I called around to about 6 different truss plants. 2 of the truss plants said they are not taking any new orders. That's how busy they are. The other 2 didn't call me back, and the final 2 did call me back, both being about the same distance away from the ranch. I received both of their bids in the same day. One of these bids had gone up about $500 from the bid I initially got 3 months ago. The other bid had gone up $2,000. I went with the first company. Everything is in their hands now. I'm at their mercy, hoping that they find a gap to squeeze my trusses in. Truthfully, my trusses are very simple, and it won't take them long at all to get them done. The other big concern that we have is the length of the trusses being delivered up here to our place. We have 21 40-foot long trusses that have to be delivered. We've had trailers 40 feet long and longer up this road before, but that's typically in the best of circumstances. If the weather changes and the road is too muddy, everything is going to get very complicated. And we're hoping and praying that this does not happen. Now that the fourth and final wall is basically finished and stood up in place, I will spend a half day knocking out any loose nails, filling any holes, but I'm going to wait until the trusses are set before I put the zip system tape over all of the seams. The shop turned out beautifully. When I pulled the final measurements, they were right where I wanted them to be. All of the exterior walls for the shop is finished. The next step would be to start setting the trusses. The problem is the trusses aren't here. Until the trusses get here, which hopefully shouldn't be long, but I'm gonna have a little bit of downtime, which my plan is to go finish the roof on the little cabin at least, maybe even the front deck. But I'm really looking forward to getting this dried in and getting this weather tight before weather changes, because at some point the weather is gonna change. Look over my shoulder here. And typically when it changes, there's no looking back. So hopefully I'll get to spend the rest of the week up there working on the little off-grid cabin. So I just got confirmation that my trusses are in line to be manufactured, but it could be a few days. So while we have some downtime, I'm going to try and get some of the big stuff out of the way that I didn't think I was going to get to until later this year. One of the first things I have to do is get conduit ran from the house where the power supply is to the shop, which is a little over 100 feet. The conflict is I have a gas line right here that feeds the house. So rather than using my excavator and potentially popping a hole in that gas line, which I'm not going to take a chance with, I'm going to dig the first probably 15 feet by hand, lay the 1¼ inch conduit in place. And then once I get out past where I know the gas line is, I'll use the excavator. And I have to go all the way across to the shop. And then I'm going to move the little sauna back here out of the way. It's a good day to do some cleanup and maybe make my wife a little happier with me. We've reached that point in the year where it's not quite time to start cooling off just yet, but we haven't had a good rain in quite some time. The overnight lows are dropping, but the daytime highs are still in the 90s right now. But the trees and the land around our place can feel it in the air. The leaves on the trees are starting to dry out, and it won't be long before the beautiful colors of autumn will be all around us. In the meantime, I've got to do as much as I possibly can outside before the trusses show up. One of the big factors is running conduit from the house to the shop. What this does is eliminates the need to have a secondary solar system just for the shop. The shop will only have lights and outlets. For that reason, I only need to run 110 volts out there. This corner of the house, I have a water line, I have a gas line, and I have a low voltage power line coming down the hill from the solar panels. In some places, I couldn't go a whole lot deeper than about 10 inches without being in conflict with some of these other lines. But as soon as I got past the gas line, I dug down to about 18 inches, which is where the conduit should be. I laid 2 pieces of 1 1/4 conduit in place, just in case I need the second conduit for something else. Because the conduit will go underneath the concrete driveway, I've basically got one chance to get this right. I probably could have gone with 3/4 or 1 inch conduit, but I would rather have excess room than not enough. Once the conduit is backfilled and compacted, Cedar and I have decided that we would lay some flagstone to go from the back door to the sauna. I've been trying to find just the right wood-burning stove for the sauna, and I haven't used it anywhere near as much as I would have liked to have used it, but there's something about getting in the sauna on a 90-degree day that's just not quite as enjoyable as getting in the sauna when it's 10 below outside. I look forward to using the sauna over winter, and I think I've got a wood sauna stove found that will work with our little sauna. I've used a number of different heat sources to soften up the PVC conduit to find the radiuses that I might need in different applications, but I don't think I've ever used the weed burner before, and truthfully, it's a little bit too hot. You can see I scorched a couple spots on the pipe, but it didn't hurt anything. I got the bend around the house, again avoiding the gas line that goes straight across right there, as well as the low voltage power lines coming down the hill from the solar panels. There's a couple spots that are kind of shallow, but it is what it is, and again, there's only going to be one 110 volt line running over to the shop. I can't say how nice it is to have the excavator just sitting and waiting for me, regardless of what projects I may have going on. Truthfully, it sits more than I use it. For that reason, it was hard to justify buying a brand new excavator. And this excavator is perfect for the size of the jobs that we do around our place. Okay, sauna's moved, conduits ran, it's backfilled. That corner of the house right there where the conduit starts is the utility, what I call the utility room. That's where all the batteries, the inverter, everything associated with the solar, that's where it starts. Comes around the house, goes to the shop, and the idea is that all of the lights in the shop, all of the outlets will be controlled by the same solar system that controls the house. Anything bigger that I might use out here in the shop, like a compressor, I'm probably going to have a 220 generator, a pretty good sized generator, which I'll have to find at some point down the road. But getting the conduit in place, what this now allows me to do is pour this concrete out here. I didn't even know if I was going to have time to get to this year, but I wanted to do it. And now that I've got every bit of a week before the trusses show up, I think next week I'm just going to form this up and get the concrete ordered and get it poured, and then get 4 or 5 loads of gravel, hoping that we can get out in front of the mud. That's the big issue, is get out in front of the mud. The next big project, there's 2 really other pressing projects, really one of them, and that's the cabin or the shelter built around the water tanks before the weather changes. But there's tons of little projects I've got to get done. Moving the solar panels up the hill is something I'm anxiously trying to get to. If the trusses don't show up fast enough, I may get to that as well. But the interesting fact is the layout of the shop would be perfect for solar panels. If I wanted to put the solar panels on the roof, the thing I don't like about having the solar panels on the roof is I can't adjust the angle like I do every year come springtime to capture as much sunlight as possible. Right now, the panels are at about 21 degrees. Come probably November, maybe October, I'll adjust them back to, I think it's right about 52 degrees to capture as much of the sun as the sun lowers. So if I fixed them to the roof, the way I would compensate for that is more solar panels, which I'm just not sure if I want to do. In cold country with heavy snow, I'm not crazy about having the solar panels sitting up on the roof where it would be hard to get to them to push the snow off. And I'm not crazy about having a whole bunch of penetrations through the steel roof that I'm going to do. So I'm going to move the solar panels up the hill at some point, hopefully in the next month or two, and that's going to facilitate another terrace up here, which will more than likely be our permanent garden spot. So anyway, next week hopefully the concrete's done. Or I get to the concrete, and again, if all goes well, maybe next weekend, I'm hoping next weekend I'll get a phone call on the trusses. So we'll see how this goes.